The late 19th and early 20th centuries were a period of profound social, scientific, and cultural transformation across Europe and North America. Amidst the rise of industrial capitalism, the expansion of scientific inquiry, and the ongoing struggle for women's rights, a new religious and cultural movement, spiritualism, emerged and flourished. At the heart of this movement stood figures like Eusapia Palladino, an Italian medium whose life and career illuminate intersections of gender, class, science, and belief. This video provides a comprehensive analysis of Palladino's biography, the material and social conditions of her era, the rise and significance of spiritualism, and the gender dynamics that made mediumship a rare avenue for women's class mobility. It also presents detailed dossiers on her supporters and critics, situating her within the broader context of psychical research, public controversy, and the evolving roles of women in the modern economy. Eusapia Palladino was born on January 21, 1854, in Minervino Murge, a rural town in the Apulia region of southern Italy. Her early life was marked by tragedy and deprivation. According to most accounts, her mother died during childbirth or several years later, and her father was murdered by brigands when she was still a child. Orphaned at a young age, Palladino was placed in the care of various families, working as a nursemaid and servant in Naples. She received little or no formal education and was described as illiterate, speaking only a dialect of Apulian and Neapolitan Italian. Palladino's childhood was characterized by relentless labor and emotional neglect. She later recalled, "I had no play like most children, no companions. It was work always. Before I was 10 years old, my father was killed by brigands. I had never known love." Her resistance to becoming a nun and her assertion, "I could never obey fixed laws, my own will guides me," reflect both her rebellious spirit and the limited options available to women of her class. Palladino's entry into the world of spiritualism was facilitated by Giovanni Diamani, an Italian spiritist who, guided by a message from his wife's séance in London, sought out the powerful medium in Naples. Diamani became her first patron and trainer, introducing her to spiritualist circles and publishing accounts of her abilities as early as 1872. Early descriptions painted her as a poor girl of 16, without parents or friends, a seer, a clairvoyant, and an impressional medium. Her mediumistic abilities were said to include table levitations, raps, materializations, and trance communications with her spirit guide, John King. These phenomena, often performed in dimly lit rooms, quickly attracted attention from both local believers and international investigators. Palladino's personal life was as tumultuous as her public career. She married twice. First to Raphael Delgais, a traveling conjurer and theatrical artist, whose store she helped manage, and later to Francesco Neola, a wine merchant. Some researchers have speculated that her first husband taught her the tricks of the séance, a suspicion that would haunt her through the rest of her career. Despite her fame, Palladino remained poor, living in modest conditions and often accepting gifts and payments for her séances. She was known to enjoy jewelry and gold, but did not accumulate significant wealth. By the 1890s, Palladino had become one of the most famous physical mediums in Europe, attracting the attention of scientists, intellectuals, and the public across Italy, France, Germany, Britain, Russia, Poland, and the United States. Her séances were attended by luminaries such as Cesare Lombroso, Charles Richet, Pierre and Marie Curie, Oliver Lodge, and the members of the Society for Psychical Research, the SPR. Palladino's career was marked by a series of high-profile investigations, exposures, and controversies. She was repeatedly caught cheating, using her hands, feet, hair, or hidden objects to produce phenomena, but also managed to convince some of her investigators that not all of her feats could be explained by trickery. Her international tours, particularly her American debut in 1909 to 1910, were orchestrated as media events, with her manager Hereward Carrington leveraging press coverage to build anticipation and notoriety. Eusapia Palladino died in Naples on May 16, 1918, reportedly of nephritis. Her death was noted in major newspapers such as The Times and the New York Times, a testament to her enduring fame. Despite or because of the controversies that surrounded her, Palladino remains one of the most studied and debated figures in the history of spiritualism and psychical research. Palladino's formative years coincided with a period of acute poverty and social upheaval in southern Italy. Followed by the unification of Italy in 1861, the South lagged far behind the industrializing North in terms of economic development and infrastructure. Over 40% of the population had incomes insufficient to meet basic needs, and illiteracy and child labor were widespread. The collapse of local industries, the imposition of heavy taxes, and the loss of church-based social welfare exacerbated rural poverty. The state's repressive response to peasant unrest, including martial law and mass executions, fueled mass emigration, with millions leaving for the Americas and Northern Europe. For women of Palladino's class, economic opportunities were severely constrained. Most worked as agricultural laborers, domestic servants, or in sweated, home-based industries such as garment finishing, laundry, or food preparation. Wages were low, hours were long, and working conditions were harsh. Women's labor was often invisible in official statistics, as much of it was irregular, home-based, or within family businesses. In urban areas, some women found employment in factories, particularly in textiles and clothing, but those jobs were typically low paid and offered very little security or advancement. Professional careers, such as teaching, nursing, or clerical work, were largely closed to women until the late 19th or early 20th century. Even then, only to those with education and social connections. The rigid class structure of 19th century Italy and Europe left little room for upward mobility, especially for women from peasant or working class backgrounds. Marriage, domestic service, or religious life were the primary options. The emergence of spiritualism, with its demand for mediums and public performers, created a rare and unconventional path for women like Palladino to achieve both economic independence and social recognition. Throughout the 19th century, the majority of women in Europe and North America worked in the home, on farms, or in low-status, low-wage jobs. Industrialization had brought some new opportunities, but also reinforced gendered divisions. Men occupied skilled and supervisory roles, while women were relegated to unskilled, repetitive, and poorly paid tasks. Women's wages were typically considered secondary or supplemental to the male breadwinner, even though they were often essential to family survival. Trade unions and labor movements largely excluded women, and demands for equal pay were slow to gain traction. Access to education and professional careers remained limited for most women. In Britain, for example, women were barred from becoming doctors, lawyers, or civil servants until the late 19th or early 20th centuries. The first female doctor, Elizabeth Garrett Anderson, qualified in 1865 but was not recognized until 1876. The first female architect, Ethel Charles, qualified in 1898. Middle and upper class women were expected to marry and manage households, with paid work considered inappropriate or even shameful. Only a small minority entered respectable professions such as teaching, music, or nursing. Against this backdrop, spiritualism and other unconventional careers offered women a unique avenue for public participation, economic independence, and even celebrity. Mediumship required no formal education or social pedigree. It was open to those who could perform the requisite phenomena and attract an audience. The movement's emphasis on direct spiritual experience rather than institutional authority created a space for women to assume leadership roles as mediums, trance lecturers, and healers. Some, like Palladino, achieved international fame and financial success, albeit often accompanied by social stigma and controversy. Spiritualism emerged in the burned-over district of upstate New York in the 1840s, a region already known for religious revivalism and experimentation. The movement's foundational event was the 1848 Rappings, produced by the Fox sisters, Margaret and Kate, in Hydesville, New York. Their public demonstrations of spirit communication quickly attracted both believers and skeptics, launching a craze that spread across the United States and Europe. Spiritualism's core beliefs include the persistence of individual consciousness after death, the possibility of communication with spirits, and the idea that spirits could offer moral and practical guidance to the living. The movement was decentralized, lacking canonical texts or a formal hierarchy, and flourished through periodicals, public lectures, camp meetings, and the activities of charismatic mediums. By the 1850s and 60s, spiritualism had become a mass phenomenon, with millions of adherents in the United States and Europe. It appeared to a wide range of people, from grieving families seeking solace to reformers advocating abolition, women's rights, and social progress. The women's movement popularly surged during periods of mass death and social upheaval, such as the American Civil War and World War I, when traditional religious consolations seemed inadequate. Spiritualist séances, trance lectures, and spirit photography became both entertainment and spiritual catharsis, blurring the lines between science, religion, and spectacle. The analogy between spirit communication and telegraphy was frequently invoked, with mediums described as mediumistic apparatus, transmitting messages from the immaterial world. Spirit photography, which purported to capture images of the dead, further blurred the line between scientific evidence and supernatural belief. Spiritual was not only a religious or philosophical movement, though. It was also a lucrative form of entertainment and commerce. Mediums charged fees for seances, public demonstrations, and private consultations. The Fox sisters, for example, became celebrities and earned substantial incomes from their performances, despite later confessions of fraud. The movement's commercial success created new opportunities for women, especially those excluded from traditional professions. Mediumship, trance lecturing, and healing allowed women to earn money, travel, and gain public recognition. Some, like Palladino, moved from poverty to international fame, though often without lasting financial security. The press played a crucial role in shaping public perceptions of spiritualism and its practitioners. Newspapers reported on seances, exposures, and scandals with a mixture of fascination and skepticism. Sensational stories of spirit manifestations, fraud, and scientific investigation fueled public debate and kept spiritualism in the spotlight. Spiritualist periodicals, such as the Banner of Light, the Spiritualist, and the Annali dello Spiritissimo, helped maintain the movement's cohesion and disseminated news, theories, and advertisements for mediums and related products. Spiritualism was noted for its association with progressive social causes, including abolition, women's suffrage, and health reform. Many prominent spiritualists were women, and the movement provided a platform for female leadership and public speaking at a time when most churches and institutions barred women from such roles. Mediumship was often justified as a form of self-sacrifice and passivity, qualities associated with Victorian femininity, but it also enabled women to challenge social norms and assert authority in public life. From its inception, spiritualism was dominated by women. The majority of public mediums, trance lecturers, and healers were female, and the movement's decentralized structure allowed women to assume leadership roles without the need for formal education or ordination. Mediumship was framed as passive, receptive state, in which the medium surrendered her will to the spirits. This narrative both reinforced and subverted contemporary gender norms, while emphasizing feminine qualities of intuition and sensitivity. It also legitimized women's public authority and economic independence. The gender dynamics of spiritualism were complex and often controversial. Female mediums, including Palladino, were sometimes accused of using their sexuality to manipulate male investigators or audiences. Reports of flirtatious behavior, erotic tension, or even sexual relationships between mediums and sitters were common, fueling both fascination and scandal. At the time, the movement's association with women's rights and social reform made it a target for critics who saw spiritualism as a threat to traditional gender roles and social order. For women of lower classes, spiritualism offered a rare path to class mobility and public recognition. Mediums like Palladino, who began life as illiterate servants or laborers, could achieve international fame and interact with scientists, intellectuals, and aristocrats. However, their success was often precarious, dependent on the patronage of male managers and the fickle attention of the press and public. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, most avenues for women's economic advancement were blocked by legal, educational, and social barriers. Domestic service, factory work, and the home-based piecework were poorly paid and offered little chance for advancement. Professional careers required education and connections that were out of reach for most working-class women. Spiritualism's demand for mediums created a new market for women who could perform the requisite phenomena and attract audiences. Mediumship required no formal qualifications, and success depended on charisma, theatrical skill, and the ability to navigate the expectations of sitters and investigators. Mediums could earn fees for seances, public demonstrations, and private consultations. Some, like Palladino, traveled internationally and became celebrities. Others, such as the Fox sisters Emma and Harding Britton, combined mediumship with writing, lecturing, and activism. The path to success was fraught with risks. Mediums were subject to exposure, scandal, and social ostracism. Accusation of fraud, improper sexual behavior, or mental instability could end a career overnight. Financial rewards were often fleeting, and very few mediums achieved lasting security or respectability. Nevertheless, for women with few other options, spiritualism offered a unique combination of economic opportunity, public recognition, and personal agency. Palladino's first major scientific investigation occurred in 1891, when Cesare Lombroso, the renowned Italian criminologist, attended seances in Naples. Initially skeptical, Lombroso was convinced by phenomena such as table movements and levitations, declaring, "I am proud of being a slave to facts." The 1892 Milan Commission, led by Alexander Arsakov and including astronomers Giovanni Schiaparelli and Carl de Prel, conducted a series of 17 sittings. Despite limited controls, the commission reported phenomena that could not be explained by fraud or hallucination, including the appearance of living human hands, while Palladino's were tied. In 1895, Palladino was invited to England for a series of sittings at the home of Frederick W. H. Myers, a founder of the Society for Psychical Research. Investigators including Richard Hodgson, Henry Sidgwick, and magician J. N. Maskelyne attended. The results were disastrous for Palladino's reputation. She was repeatedly caught freeing her hands and feet to produce phenomena, and the investigators concluded that all observed effects were the result of conscious and deliberate fraud, which must have needed long practice to bring itself to the present level of skill. As a result, the SPR banned Palladino from further experiments in Britain, and her credibility suffered a major blow. However, some investigators, such as Oliver Lodge and Frederick Myers, continued to believe that not all of her phenomena could be explained by trickery. Between 1905 and 1908, Palladino's reputation was partially rehabilitated through a series of seances in Paris. These were attended by scientists such as Pierre and Marie Curie, Charles Richet, and Henry Bergson. The Institute conducted over 40 sittings, employing rigorous controls and recording instruments. While instances of cheating were detected, the investigators concluded that some phenomena remained inexplicable by fraud alone. Pierre Curie, in particular, was impressed by Palladino's performances. Writing to a colleague, "The phenomena that we saw appeared inexplicable as trickery. Tables raised from all four legs, movement of objects from a distance, hands that pinch or caress you, luminous apparitions." Marie, though, was more skeptical, but did not dismiss the possibility of genuine phenomena. In 1908, the SPR appointed a committee, Edward Fielding, W. W. Bagley, and Hereward Carrington, to investigate Palladino in Naples. Despite catching her cheating, the committee reported that some phenomena, such as table levitations and object movements, could not be explained by physical dexterity alone. Palladino's tour in 1909 to 1910, managed by Hereward Carrington, was marked by intense media attention and public demonstrations. However, she was repeatedly exposed as a fraud by investigators such as Hugo Munsterberg, Joseph Rinn, and William S. Davis, who observed her using her feet or her hands to manipulate objects. Despite these exposures, some supporters continued to argue that not all of her phenomena could be explained by trickery, citing the possibility of unconscious fraud or dissociative states. Palladino was adept at freeing her hands and feet from the control of sitters, using them to move objects, produce raps, or touch participants. She employed strands of hair, hidden objects, and sleight of hand to create the illusion of supernatural phenomena. Investigators observed her using her foot to levitate tables, manipulating curtains, and moving objects behind the séance cabinet. In some cases, accomplices or specially constructed furniture were suspected. High-profile exposures. The Cambridge sittings, 1895. Palladino was caught freeing her hands and feet, leading to her ban from further SPR investigations in Britain. Naples, 1908. Despite strict controls, some phenomena remained unexplained, though some cheating was observed. New York, 1909 to 1910. Hugo Munsterberg and others caught Palladino using her foot to manipulate objects. Magicians and scientists confirmed the use of physical tricks. Palladino occasionally admitted to cheating, claiming that her sitters willed her to do so or that she was compelled by the demands of her audience. Some supporters argued that she engaged in unconscious fraud during trance states, a theory advanced by Julian Ochorowicz. Supporters of Palladino were often prominent scientists, intellectuals, or psychical researchers. Many began as skeptics, but were convinced by her performances, at least in some part. Some, like Richet and the Curies, saw her as a potential source of new scientific knowledge, while others, like Carrington and Ochorowicz, developed elaborate theories to explain this phenomenon. The willingness of such figures to endorse Palladino reflects both the allure of spiritualism and the porous boundaries between science and the supernatural of the era. Critics of Palladino were often magicians, psychologists, or skeptical psychical researchers. They emphasized the prevalence of fraud, the inadequacy of controls, and the dangers of credulity. Their investigations and exposures contributed to the decline of physical mediumship and the marginalization of spiritualism as a scientific pursuit. Palladino's career was shaped by intense media scrutiny and public debate. Newspapers reported on her seances, exposures, and scandals with a mixture of fascination and skepticism. Her American tour was orchestrated as a media event, with her manager, Carrington, leveraging press coverage to build anticipation and notoriety. The press played a dual role. It amplified Palladino's fame and drew crowds to her performances, but it also fueled skepticism and ridicule. Satirical magazines and yellow journalism often depicted her as a charlatan or a manipulator, while spiritualist periodicals defended her against detractors. Public opinion was deeply divided. For some, Palladino was a wonder worker and a symbol of the mysteries yet to be uncovered by science. For others, she was a fraud and a symptom of mass gullibility. Modern scholarship has reevaluated Palladino's significance, situating her at the intersection of science, gender, and popular culture. Modern scholarship has reevaluated Palladino's significance, situating her at the intersection of science, gender, and popular culture. Historians have explored her role as an epistemic object shaped by the competing narratives of scientists, spiritualists, and the media. Her adaptability and performative skill are seen as key to her success in navigating diverse audiences and expectations. Recent studies have also emphasized the gendered dynamics of spiritualism, highlighting how the movement provided both opportunities and constraints for women. Palladino's career exemplifies the possibilities and perils of class mobility in a society marked by rigid hierarchies and limited options for women. Eusapia Palladino's life and career offer a window into the complex interplay of gender, class, science, and belief in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Born into poverty and obscurity, she rose to international fame as a medium, captivating scientists, intellectuals, and the public with her performances. Her career was marked by both acclaim and scandal, as supporters and critics debated the authenticity of her phenomenon and the meaning of spiritualism itself. Palladino's story illustrates the limited economic opportunities available to women of her class and the unique role that spiritualism played in offering a path to class mobility and public recognition. The movement's emphasis on direct spiritual experience, its association with social reform, and its openness to female leadership made it a powerful, if controversial, force in the modern world. The debates and controversies that surrounded Palladino continue to resonate, reflecting enduring questions about the boundaries of science and belief, the construction of gender and authority, and the possibilities for agency and mobility in a changing society. Her legacy endures as a testament to the complexities and contradictions of an era in which supernatural, the scientific, and the social were inextricably intertwined. Thank you.